Halloween Kills is right around the corner, and a few days ago fans started discussing once again if Danielle Harris should be brought back to the Halloween series. On this week's Horror Reanimated, I discussed some possibilities and set up some scenarios that may make sense. My name is Brian J. This is Horror Reanimated. Hey everybody, it's Brian J. with another edition of Horror Reanimated. You can follow Horror Reanimated through me, bshowbrian, at bshowbrian on Twitter or on Instagram. And you can send ideas, thoughts, commentary, whatever, bshowbrian at gmail.com. So, Danielle Harris is obviously the heir apparent to Jamie Lee Curtis, the original Scream Queen. I don't know. Some would say that was Janet Leigh. So the heir apparent to the heir apparent, I guess. And played numerous roles in horror. But I think most fans remember her for her roles as Jamie Lloyd in Halloween 4 and 5. And as Annie Brackett in Rob Zombie's Halloween. So there's a couple different roles that she played in the Halloween franchise itself. And every time they discuss a sequel or a reboot, she's always throwing her hat in the ring to take part. And unfortunately, I'd have to say I have mixed feelings about that because I'm a huge fan of hers. I mean, she was probably one of my earlier, in some ways, one of my earlier crushes as far as celebrities go. Not that I'm a dude who deals with that shit very often, you know what I mean? But like, she's about 10 years older than I am. So when I was a kid and I started finding horror movies, and I mean after Halloween 4 and 5, obviously I'm not a fucking pedophile, but, when I would watch even Roseanne as a kid, she was like 10 years older than I am. So she was like always Darlene's like rough around the edges friend. And I was like, I see that. I see you. And then watching Urban Legend, she was like the goth chick who is the roommate, right? She's murdered by the guy while the redhead chick puts her headphones in and tries to ignore her because she's always making all these loud-ass noises when her and her boyfriend are going at it. So, like, there was always these things. And then I think Disney Wish Upon a Star. I remember being in Fort Myers, Florida at a restaurant, and the bar had the Disney Channel movie on because it was, like, part of it was a bar, part of it was a restaurant. It was like a pub type thing. And it was night. I never forget. I tried alligator tail for the first time. It wasn't bad, just really rubbery. If you ever try it, but I was like 12, 13 maybe, and here I look up on this Disney Channel show that's playing in the restaurant, and it's Wish Upon a Star, and it's Danielle Harris on a lunchroom table, like like dark lipstick and shit. It's like, oh my god, temptress. But I think I was like 13, 14. So it was interesting because as I started watching horror, I didn't even know that was the same person. So mixed feelings from me, obviously. But I'm also really sympathetic to the way that her Halloween career almost ended with Halloween 6. If you have the Ultimate Blu-ray collection, you can find her story there in the extras, the bonus features. She tells the story of why she wasn't Jamie at Halloween 6, the process in which, she spent a lot of money to try to emancipate herself so she could try to play it and then was still not cast in the role and just kind of cast aside. So, and it was like a studio thing. So, I was glad to see her come back in Rob Zombie's Halloween as Annie. I think she did a great job, and she's gorgeous and really you could tell she had fun with that role. But the character of Jamie Lloyd, Laurie Strode's daughter, never to me really got her due finale. I don't think so. I don't think a lot of fans agree. However, the issue now is that with this whole new continuity, Judy Greer's character is her daughter. It would be really confusing to fans if you brought in Danielle Harris as And excuse the dog noises. My dog's getting really old, and she just came down from upstairs. She was in bed. And she just wants to be by me, so I'm letting her hang tonight. I don't know how much longer I'll have to let her hang out, so she's going to hang out with us. So I'll try to edit out the noise as best I can. It's my Lily girl. Yeah, I said your name. I'm surprised she can even hear me. So it would just confuse everything if you added her back in as Jamie's daughter at this point. And I think a lot of people have said that. Like, well, what do you expect? And there is a lot of backlash from some people. Whenever she says this stuff, some people say, get over it. Some people say, just get on with it. They're not going to cast you. I think it would be cool even if they cast her in like a cameo role or a different role than the daughter. I'm going to discuss at another time kind of some ideas I have for an H2O style return for Jamie, to almost as if you're retconning part 6 and everything after, and you're just finishing out Jamie's trilogy or Jamie's story. Because I think, and hear me out on this, I think Halloween could redefine how franchises carry on and tell their stories. They've retconned their own series several times. Halloween 3 never happened. Halloween 4 through 6 never happened. Now Halloween 2 through Resurrection never happened. Rob Zombie rebooted it. That never happened. So you're going to have all these different films and all these different continuities, and the good thing about the Halloween franchise is you can kind of choose your own adventure in a way. And I did a video about this on my YouTube channel, Brian J's Horror History, which you can check out on YouTube. Obviously, it's a YouTube channel. But I think it could redefine horror franchises. And I think they could get away with doing, even if it was like Netflix releases, almost like Star Wars had Star Wars, and it was the story of the Skywalkers. But in between, you had Rogue One, which to me is probably one of the top 2 or 3 Star Wars movies ever made. That was a success. Then they did Solo, which is a movie no one was really asking for. And they stopped doing the standalone Star Wars movies. A Star Wars story, whatever they're called. And then they have Mandalorian on Disney Plus, and that's the hottest shit in the world right now. Or was a couple months ago. And now fans are happy with Clone Wars, and you've had the cartoons and stuff. So I think if you look at Halloween as a much bigger property in terms of intellectual property, to use my business hat here, Halloween is more than just a standalone movie franchise with a single narrative story. Halloween encompasses a lot more than that. And to be fair, it echoes, my opinion anyway, echoes back to what John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, Tommy Lee Wallace, so many people thought in 1982 when they released Halloween 3, when they were going to do anthologies. I think the medium now is different to where everything doesn't have to be feature films. You could do double features on Netflix. You could do standalone films. You could do a different series, almost like Rogue One, a Star Wars story. You could do Jamie's Revenge, a Halloween story, or a Halloween tale, or something like that. And again, using a similar idea to Tommy Lee Wallace or John Carpenter or Deborah Hill, you could do one of these every Halloween on a smaller budget, and I didn't even think, look guys, I made very few notes on this. I have thought about this a little bit over the past few weeks, but not to this, and this is why I love doing podcasting. When I write my notes out, I tend to write a novel, and then I can't organize my thoughts, and I have a hard time trimming the fat. This episode is very much, I looked at my list of ideas, made a last-minute decision, did a quick brainstorm. I've thought of a few things over the past few weeks or months, but really I'm just kind of riffing. And I know a lot of people don't like that with podcasts. They want straight and concise and whatever, but I'm way too robotic when I do that. And in this case, I just thought of something very, very interesting that I never even considered before, which is why I'm glad I did this. Part of, to me, what's lost on modern horror is that it's way too goddamn squeaky clean and shiny. It's not gritty. I mean, you see gritty stuff and it's good, but it's not gritty. It's high def. It's just a lot of the same reasons I don't like modern wrestling either. For those of you who are aware of my wrestling fascination, it's just too gritty, too squeaky clean. And to me, horror is gritty. I grew up on 80s and 90s horror. Really 70s and 80s, I should say. And in fact, I just watched Tourist Trap for the first time a few nights ago, and it was fucking amazing. It's silly and gritty and campy, and I think much like Rogue One, or not Rogue One, but much like The Mandalorian has allowed Star Wars to expand its storytelling beyond just a 90 or 120 minute movie and cramming a bunch of stuff in like they tried with The Rise of Skywalker. I think not just a series on Netflix, but maybe an annual low-budget film in the vein of Halloween. Maybe one is, oh man, there's another idea for another couple episodes. Damn. Halloween standalone. See, this is why we do this pitch room style. That was the ultimate idea for this podcast series to begin with. Like a pitch room for my brain. Hopefully you guys like it. And look, it's leading to more episodes and more ideas. So, but no, if you do like standalone, single purpose, low budget movies each Halloween, the low budget aspect not only has the charm of the old movies, but it fits in with what the spirit of the original was about. No exploding heads, even though it's kind of cool. You know, no crazy stuff. Just down and dirty, minimalist approach, which is what made Halloween so fantastic to begin with. It was a psychological mindfuck. But I definitely think if you stay in that vein, you could do different stories. You could follow Tommy. You could follow Jamie Lloyd and bring her back, which again, I'll talk about on another episode. But how do you incorporate Danielle Harris with the new story, which I know they're not doing, but this is just for fun anyway. How do you do that? Well, some people have said you can't bring her back as a daughter. I disagree. I think you can do anything. And you can either find a really good way to do it and hope that fans buy it, or you can do the lazy thing and just kind of slip it in there. Two different things have inspired me, and I almost didn't want to do an episode on this, but then I was watching old Unsolved Mysteries, and two things inspired me. One is a woman named Georgia Tann. Georgia Tann used to run it was like an orphanage that used to place adopted children or fostered children with new families. It was called the Tennessee Children's Home Society, and it operated from like the 50s to the 90s. And basically what they found is that over 40 years or whatever it was, this lady would just kidnap children from poor people. They would kidnap children from poor people. I hate to laugh about it, but it's so bizarre. And she got away with it because she was rich and would bribe the judge and get these false, parental documents signed and witnessed by the judge and by the court systems. And if one of the parents would contest everything, the courts would rule with Georgia Tann because she was an accredited institution. And a lot of times they would say, well, you're unfit to parent these children. And there's one famous story where this little girl was about 2, and this breaks my heart because I've got a 2-year-old son and I've got a 7-year-old daughter. But basically, she said she was in the park with her family. They're having a picnic, and Georgia Tann pulls up in her limo and tells her to get in the car. And she's 2, so she just kind of gets in, doesn't know what's going on, and she drives off with her. And then when her mom contested it in the court, they said, well, you're poor and you're an unfit mother and you have too many kids. So we're going to place her with Georgia Tann. And then Georgia Tann did some secret black market adoption and scooted her off to somewhere else. So that inspired me. Second was watching another episode of Unsolved Mysteries. There was a woman who said her daughter died during childbirth, and that's what she was told by the hospital. But there was these really weird circumstances surrounding it, where she believed, and had good cause to believe, that the hospital lied to her because, again, she was supposedly an unfit mother in the 1950s or 60s. And single woman, recently divorced, all that stuff. No husband, no boyfriend. So seeing what they'd done with Georgia Tann, it's not hard to believe that this lady's daughter they would have told her that the daughter was stillborn, but then given her to another family or a foster family or something like that. And there was, again, a lot of real weird circumstances surrounding it. So there you've got 2 cases from one TV show alone where children were misplaced without, or were placed with families, in some cases without families knowing. So that's a quick go around to, oh God, there's Judy Greer, and she's Lauries' daughter. And then this other girl shows up, claiming to be Lauries' daughter. Now, again, I think that would muddy the waters a bit and make things a little too complicated. But as these, Michael Myers is supposed to be dead, and, Laurie set him on fire, and Mom, we know he's dead, he didn't escape. Well, now this other person starts showing up as more people are dying, claiming to be Lauries' daughter. And it could be interesting. You could play it off where, maybe she is her daughter, and Dr. Loomis knew about it, and Laurie thought she was stillborn or something, and Loomis arranged for the daughter to be adopted away because he knew Michael will come for her. He will always come. He will never stop. And that's a really bad Loomis. My voice is starting to go. I've already done another podcast. I say that every week, so fuck you, self-doubt. Inner monologue, be damned. But, you could play it like that, like Loomis or the town of Haddonfield. Like, that's another thing that I think they could play up if they ever do a series or as they continue the series along. And it's something that Danielle Harris touched on in Halloween 6, and it got lost in translation, was this small town, closely guarded, very secretive, almost like a secret society type thing. And maybe they arrange for her to be, scooted out. And they make Laurie to be this pariah. And they're trying to keep things under wraps. They don't want things to get out of control again. And they don't think Laurie's a fit mother. And then maybe by the time she has, I don't even remember Judy Greer's character. She was so terrible. I don't want to say non-consequential to the story, but I just, anyway. And again, nothing personal against her. I just did not like that character. But, maybe by the time she came around, Laurie was married and the city saw her as somewhat stable. But small towns are weird, man. I lived in the suburbs of Toledo, right? Grew up right outside the city limits, middle class, suburb. Still kind of in the city, but Toledo's weird. It's like a city, but it's rural. It's strange. So recently I moved out to the country, out to the rural outskirts, past Toledo and past the suburbs. And my neighborhood was hit by a tornado in 2004, so long before I moved out here. But it's just really weird out here. I love it, but it's weird. Like, there's no trees because of the tornado. It's like you took our neighborhood and dropped it in the middle of a cornfield. And a lot of the people that have been here since, like, when they first put the neighborhood in, they're really nice people, but it's small town USA. Everyone's way too nice and way too trusting, and they leave their doors unlocked. And oh my God, someone broke into my car. Would you ever think someone would do that? It's like, yeah, I grew up in Toledo all the time. Like, we keep our cars in our garages at night. I had bikes stolen out of my garage during the daytime in the summer when I was a kid, and I lived in a good neighborhood. So, like, yeah, I expect that. Like, I went for a drive today, and there's people next town over, but there's people, like, their kids are sitting by themselves, Main Street, small town, Main Street, outside the ice cream place, all by themselves. The oldest kid was probably 11, and they were girls. And it's like, oh my God, you fucking idiots. Like, where I come from, you don't do that. Like, we did when I was a kid, because it was still a small community. So when I was a kid, me and my brothers used to walk around everywhere. But it's a different world now. I've seen too many Unsolved Mysteries episodes. No fucking way would I let my 7-year-old daughter go with her friend down to get ice cream away from the house. Fuck that. Anyway, small towns are weird. Would not be above them, I think, to be conspiratorial to protect these kids in the best interest of the child. So I think now that I've gone way out of the way to describe this and to justify my position, there are absolutely ways that you could do this and accomplish it. Either she was adopted away. Again, she shows up as people are starting to die. Maybe she's a reporter. Maybe she's from out of town. Maybe she's coming through town. And maybe it's an undercurrent of the story. You're trying to figure out, is this really her daughter or not? So maybe she's not her daughter. And maybe she's just one of those weird celebrity chasers people. Like, I've seen people on social media, women who claim to be like in love with serial killers. I don't fucking get it. I don't get it, guys. They're serial killers. You know what they do, right? Yeah. They murder cereal. Anyway, I'm starting to get loopy. But it's just, there's a lot of strange people out there. So I could see, and Danielle Harris has always played some of those rough around the edges type characters. So I think having her come in surrounded by this mystique, she's around the same age as Lauries' daughter. Is she really her daughter or not? Maybe she has a really convincing backstory. And then you can use a parental DNA service like 23andMe. And again, you can go different directions with this. Like, maybe, just maybe, she sent in a saliva sample, right? So throughout the movie, Laurie's like, you're going to have to prove it to me. She's like, look, I've sent this in. We'll get the results in, however many days. And it just so happens to coincide with Halloween. I don't know. And, maybe something's going on and she's all huddled and maybe she's gotten to know her and she's starting to feel maternal with her. And Judy Greer's character is still not trusting. And they're huddled, hiding from Michael or something like this together as a group. And all of a sudden you hear, bleep. That was a terrible notification sound. Okay, here it is. So you hear that. And then, the light on the phone flashes and they look over and Laurie grabs the phone. There is no match. And then she turns. She's like, wait, you're not my daughter. And then, I know, she knows the gig is up and she kills Judy Greer. And now Laurie has to deal with the loss of her daughter. And now it's her fault, and she feels grief because she's let this person in, and her daughter was trying to protect her. Whatever. I mean, and I know I'm going way out of the box here. But, or maybe she is her daughter. I don't know. And you work it that way. And now there's an issue between her and Judy Greer's character. Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe she's Michael's daughter. I don't know. Maybe she claims to be Laurie's daughter, but she's really Michael's daughter, and she wants revenge for her murderous father and what Laurie's put her family through. I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways you could work that where she wouldn't necessarily be Laurie's daughter. Or you could make her Laurie's daughter, estranged, right? I mean, yeah, I think it would be way too confusing if you did it that way. But again, I think if you're creative enough, and again, I'm not a Hollywood writer, so far be it for me to tell people how to do their jobs. I'm not here to do that. That's not what this is about. This is just a fun exercise of, going through different possibilities in films of movies that never happened, ideas that were not utilized, unused scripts, alternate universes, all sorts of stuff. Fan fiction, fan theories. But to me, I think I have a soft spot for her. And even though I always get the feeling whenever I hear Jamie Lee Curtis talk about it, that she almost has like no regard for that character and no regard for Danielle Harris as an actress. So I don't know. It's weird. I don't think it would ever happen. But, and to be fair, I know people have said Danielle Harris, that the Jamie Lloyd character should have her just end. But I think she did resolve that when she came back to play Annie to an extent. So I don't think it's necessarily owed to her. I just think it would be really cool if they're bringing back Tommy Doyle and Lindsay Wallace, and they're having all these other characters. Like Charles Cyphers is coming back to reprise his role as Sheriff Brackett. If they're going to that trouble to do stuff like that, I think that's cool. Very cool. But I think to be simplistic, just to write off Danielle Harris and say there's no place, I think there's always a place. I don't think it just has to be a shitty little walkthrough cameo. I think it could be. She could be a waitress in the local diner or a bartender, and she goes to serve Laurie a drink, or she cuts Laurie off. And Laurie orders her around, and she just turns and says, "What are you, my mother?" Or maybe Laurie's at a bar with her daughter. Maybe Laurie was an alcoholic. Maybe Judy Greer's character becomes an alcoholic. Laurie and the granddaughter go to find Judy Greer's... Wait, hang on, let me look this name up so I don't keep saying Judy Greer's character. I know it's a little late. We're like 26 minutes into this little thing. But Halloween Kills. And hopefully none of you assholes posted spoilers, because I'm trying to avoid it at all costs. Oh, great, and she's not on there, so that's fine. Where's cast, goddammit? Alright, IMDb. Okay, Judy Greer. Karen! There we go, Karen. I'll just think Nurse Karen. But, that was another one. Alternate Halloween 2. Karen. Alright, sorry. So... Again, you could easily, maybe Karen is an alcoholic now, taking in her mother's footsteps. And Laurie shows up at the bar, and Danielle Harris's character is the bartender, and maybe she keeps serving Karen. And Laurie says, I think she's had enough. And she's like, hey, she's paying. As long as she's paying and she's, she's not intoxicated, so I'm going to keep serving her until she is. And Laurie's like, I think you need to cut it out or lay off, or I think you need to mind your own business. And then just, again, that one little line of like, what are you, my mother? Or what do you think you are, my mother? I see, to me, that's more cornball. I know that's much more likely to happen if they would bring her back into the fold as just like a little cameo with a little nod. But to me, that's more cornball than trying to like find a way to shoehorn her into the plot. I think you really could very easily find something for her. I mean, shit, they made Artie the strongest man in the world, the peanut butter on his penis dad. They had how many lawman characters? They had fucking Dr. Sartain trying to put him in there when you already had Laurie. But see, if you look at that, like look at Dr. Sartain, they tried to not shoehorn, because this made sense with the turn, right? So putting Sartain in there when you already had Laurie to kind of hunt Michael, almost Laurie was the new Loomis in a sense. You didn't need Sartain, but then when Sartain turned, it was supposed to make sense for the story because he's the one who let him out. He is the yin to Laurie's yang. He is the opposite of... He's the bizarro Loomis, in a way. So, to me, that forces different creative opportunities. So, okay, if we have to take Danielle Harris and we have to put her in the film, how do we do that? Well, I think I already came up with a couple ideas. I don't know if they're any good or if they'd fly. But I think it's... to force yourself to do that. And maybe that's because I, as a hobby, have gone through and rewritten movies and done fan fiction. I think that's something that fan fiction both does really well and really badly at times, depending on whose stuff you're reading and who's writing it and where they're coming from and how much of a creative writing background they have, or let's be honest, just a natural knack for writing as it is, or storytelling. Some people set out like, I'm going to do this, and these are my characters, and this is what I'm going to write, and they find a way to make things fit. Doesn't always work. I've seen cases where it does. And you can't disregard fan fiction. I love fan fiction because, let's be honest, in Halloween 2018, someone finally made something that I had seen in numerous fan scripts dating back to the old message board days in the mid-2000s. The human jack-o'-lantern. They did it in Halloween 2018. I remember seeing that on screen and going, oh my God, I read that in a fan fiction in like 2010, 2008. No, 2007. It was sometime after Halloween Resurrection. So, and I'll even give you the build up to it. I want to say this particular fan fiction, I don't remember the story, but I think it had to do with John Tate, Carrie Tate, Laurie Strode's son John, the one played by Josh Hartnett in H2O. There's a lot of fan fiction with John becoming a new Loomis. And I may be conflating because there was a lot of them at the time. But this particular one, the opening to the film, instead of the pumpkin, it showed like the front porch of a house, and you kind of wind around, almost like Michael in the first movie. And then you come up to the porch on a jack-o'-lantern. And it's not a real jack-o'-lantern. You realize really quickly it's a human face that is cut up, and there's a candle placed in the face like a jack-o'-lantern. So again, that was like mid-2000s. I read that. And then I see that up on the big screen. I'm like, oh my God. And again, it's Halloween. It's probably parallel thinking. It's not a ripoff. But in my mind, I remember thinking, holy shit, they ripped off that fan fiction I read in the mid-2000s. Oh, man. So don't ever disregard fan fiction. If you write something and you like it and you want to share it with people, fucking share it. Because who knows, you at least you may see your work up on the screen someday. Someone may steal it if they think it's good. Or even if it's parallel thinking, you may see, hey, that was a pretty good idea that I came up with 15 years ago because someone else came up with it now. So that's my inspirational moment for tonight. But I think it'd be very easy to fit her in. Daughter, waitress. Maybe one of the Strode girls gets institutionalized and she becomes the new Loomis. And here's a thought. Loomis was an established psychologist or psychiatrist at the time, right? You got the feeling that Loomis knew his shit, that he had seen everything. He was weathered, he was grizzled, he was grayed, he was balding. After he thought he'd seen everything, now he sees Michael Myers. And he thinks, holy shit, I've seen some stuff. I've even seen some fan fiction where Loomis's backstory was that he was like the psychiatrist of psychiatrists, that he had been brought in as a specialist to treat all of these mass murderers and to profile these people, and he'd worked with law enforcement, and then he meets Michael Myers, and it's like, wow, this is the real deal. I've dealt with everybody. I don't know how to deal with this. And I like to think about that for Loomis. Like, he was a really seasoned guy. And then he fought, he came across evil itself. But if you flip that around and look at Sartain was much in the same way. He was a student of Loomis. He was tenured. He was an older man. He just happened to be like I said, the yin to Loomis's yang. So, in that regard, if you brought in Danielle Harris, she could have a big role in a Halloween film. She could kind of tease being the new Loomis, but instead of being this grizzled, seasoned, psych expert. Maybe she was a single mom who decided to go back to school, and she got her psychiatry degree and her doctorate, and she's just finished her residency or whatever, group practice. So she's very bright. She's got a dark side, maybe a dark past, because, let's face it, Danielle Harris is really good at playing those characters. So why not play that up? And this character now, much like, any of the hero's journey stories in antiquity, whether it's modern fantasy films like Star Wars or older tales like Beowulf, you have an unlikely hero that's now thrust into or forced into a situation where she's got kids or had kids. Maybe there's a tragic backstory. I don't fucking know. But, maybe she was married. It didn't work out. She's divorced, and now she went back to school, and now she's making something of herself. So now her goal was, I want to help people. I want to be a doctor. And she's working in this hospital or this psych ward or whatever it is. And she's still fairly early in her career, even though she's in her 40s, because she started over. And now, instead of being, like I said, a prepared, grizzled, experienced psychiatrist who runs up against and becomes the Van Helsing to Michael's Dracula, now maybe Danielle Harris plays this green in a, for those of you who don't know, green is, rookie, unseasoned, like unripe. An unripe banana's green, right? So she's green as goose shit, as my wrestling friends would say. And now she's, much like your heroes from antiquity, forced into the situation of having to face evil itself as the psychiatrist. And maybe because of her maternal instincts or her female instincts, and again, I'm not getting all fembotted out on this movie, but I'm just saying, it's a different approach than Sartain would have brought, than Loomis would have brought. But maybe that experience that she has, and she's a woman and maternal, and maybe that is a different type of Loomis. And maybe she's still a badass. Maybe she was a cop and she was a detective and she decided to go deeper into criminal justice, criminal mind, got her doctorate, yeah. So, again, there's, 3 ideas now? There's the bartender waitress cameo with the cheesy one-liner Easter egg, which very easy to do, but I think very lazy. 2, stalker-ish, estranged possible daughter. That's number 2. 3, law enforcement or psychiatrist, potentially, not set in stone, you'd see how people accepted it, potentially the new Loomis, or Loomis-type character. There's 3 ideas right there. We've been doing this, 37 minutes. So again, I don't think it's necessary to bring her back in. Oh, and again, that's not even counting the other ideas we haven't talked about that we're going to talk about on another episode. Again, if you do an episodic Netflix series or a once-a-year anthology type thing, or like a Halloween tale from the Halloween franchise, right? And that'd be another great idea too, because then you could do almost like the Masters of Horror. You could have different, like, you could have Jordan Peele do an episode as a director and writer, almost like the Twilight Zone, or like what's it called, Creep Show, or the Masters of Horror. You could do a number of different things, and you could even bring in John Carpenter to direct an episode, although that would be really expensive, and they probably wouldn't make it work if it was a small budget Netflix thing. But again, that's another topic for another day. But again, that's not even scratching the surface on that. You could do almost anything there, and we can explore that on another episode. But what do you guys think? Do you think Danielle Harris should be brought back? Do you think her business with Halloween is done after her reprisal or her return as Annie Brackett in Rob Zombie's films? Because I think she played a really good role and had some good moments there. Would you like to see her back? Do you think she's, it's sour grapes and she looks desperate at this point? Because I've heard people say that too. I don't agree. It was obviously a big part of her life. And there are a lot of people who want to see her come back, myself included. So why would she not make an overture whenever talk of a new film springs up? Hope springs eternal, I guess. And Jamie Lee Curtis, and rightfully so, she's the Scream Queen. She's had 2 different redemption stories. She's had 2. Why can't we get one for Jamie Lloyd? Do it right. So, let me know what you think. bshowbrian@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter and Instagram @bshowbrian. I will be back now that my studies are over with. Hopefully I should be able to do this weekly. Or my original idea was do a bunch of episodes and put them up once a month, which I think I might do that. Because I feel like, I did a wrestling one earlier. I wanted to keep going on a similar topic. This one I want to keep going on the Netflix idea for Jamie. They kind of go together. That would be 2 episodes, and then I'd put them both up, and then you would have to subscribe to my feed at bshowbrian.com. If you go there, just a note, if you go to bshowbrian.com, that has all of my podcasts. So occasional B-Show podcasts that I do with my brother Steve, or alone or a friend. I might talk about Star Wars or something else nerdy, something retro, 90s, whatever the fuck I want to talk about. Ninja Turtles, 30th anniversary this year. I didn't do anything on that. I planned on it. So B-Show is like more general nerdy shit. Then there's this show, Horror Reanimated. Then there's Wrestling Reanimated, which is the same thing as this, except with wrestling. Ideas that never happened, big matchups that never happened, tweaking things that did. Basically, I'm Rick or Morty, and we're going through the alternate universes. And that's like we're doing here. And then obviously you can check me out on YouTube at Brian J's Horror History. I'm almost done with a part review, part commentary on Friday the 13th, Part 5, kind of sticking up for the Black Sheep. So I think it's called Black Sheep Friday. That might be the name I've centered on for it. But I don't know. Go subscribe there. Start slowly gaining somewhat of a following. Even though it's a small one, I appreciate it very, very much because I haven't done a whole lot with it lately. But that's going to go up very soon. Check back with me next week. Hopefully I'll have another episode up of this show, Horror Reanimated. And what the fuck? Hit that subscribe button. And I hate to sound like random YouTubers that my kid listens to, but it's the only way you're going to see, especially if I'm not able to do these every week, when new episodes come up. And you're going to want to know because we're going to get into a lot of cool stuff like this. So let me know what you think, what your ideas are, how you feel. How you doing? And I'll be back hopefully next week. My name is Brian J. This is Horror Reanimated.